This really should be made into its own story, but there's a whole lot more that happened than what I'm going to skim over here. It was after the Daytona rally one year, and I should have worked there, but I didn't. I wanted to play instead. And so when it was over, I had very little money, and I just moseyed south through Florida, heading for the Keys, never having been there before. Somewhere down near Alligator Alley, a guy told me of a free campground that had a little lake in it, and so of course I went there. And around this campground, there was a few different people camped, and there was this one family, I think they were from Arkansas, and they invited me to stay in their camp, as you see here. And old Betsy set up right there. I guess that blue tent's probably mine at the time. It's a long time ago, right? This was the family. I don't remember any of their names. The two guys to the left, I'm not sure, but the girl sitting on my bike was the guy on the right in the green, his wife, and the other girl's his mother. Now, he seemed to make the decisions for everybody. Everybody kind of went with what he said. And so one day, he took off to get some steaks. They were really happy to have me there. I think they were from Arkansas. I think they were doing the winter down here. And he went off to get some steaks, and while he was gone, his wife asked me, she had scoliosis, that's why, and she was pretty crippled up. But his wife and his mother asked me if they could take pictures on my bike. So I said, yeah. So I picked up his wife and set her on my bike, and they stood around it, and I took pictures with their little camera. And then I gave them back to him. And while I was picking the wife, the crippled girl up, because her scoliosis was real bad, I was too close to the dog that was on a chain, and without a sound, that thing ran over and latched onto my ass. So here I am with a crippled girl in my arms lifted off my bike, and a dog latched onto my ass, screaming like a woman in labor. After that, I just moved away from the dog. I think they might have put him in a car or something, I don't remember. But as long as he was on his chain and I didn't get too close, it was cool. So that was a fun thing that happened. Then Mom wanted me to take her for a ride. When, I guess I would call him the boss man, everybody seemed to go with what his decisions were. But he gets back, he tells me, he says, come on, boy, he says, put your bike down by the water, by the lake. This was on the shore of a lake that had a few alligators in it. And he took, so I did. So he took his fishing pole with a sinker and cast it out to this gator and got it to follow him back. And when it got up next to my bike, he's standing there smacking this alligator with the fishing pole, and the gator's like up these, I don't know where those pictures are, if I have them. This was all film. I didn't take as many pictures back then, but the gator's snapping at him, and his mom's running around. She's going, oh, be careful, son, be careful. And he's going, he's going, oh, Ma, it's just an old gator being a gator. I was laughing my ass off. But you can see the alligator next to my bike here, right? So I just moseyed south, after Daytona. That's just in Florida on the road south, inland. I like the inland route better because the cities are all along the water. And I came into Key West for the first time that I'd ever been there, which if you haven't, it's an incredible ride because it's 130-something miles of bridges that bounce from island to island. So I gets to the last one. Now I got $100 to my name, and my bike's got bald tires, and it really needs a bunch of other things fixed on it too. And by a complete accident, because there's a lot to this story, a lot more. Cops running me out and after 6 weeks in the middle of the night, whatever. There's all these other things that happened, but something happened to my bike and I had to fix it. And I went to a scooter shop. Now, if you've ever been to Key West, you know that there's scooters everywhere. They get through the traffic. The island's small. A lot of people have them just for their main vehicle. They're better to get around the islands on. And I went to this scooter shop and I needed something, I forget, to work on my bike. And John, the guy who runs the place, he loaned me a few tools and whatever I needed. And when I got it done, I said to him, I said, John, I need a job. Do you need a guy? And he said, you might be in luck. He said, I got a guy leaving next week. He said, come back on Monday and talk to me, because it must have been Friday or something. And so I came back, and I didn't have the basic metric tools. And what John did was he bought the tools off the mechanic who was leaving. He only took a few basic tools for these scooters, and he just took that money out of my paycheck. and I went to work on scooters. In this one, I'm changing the engine out. I remember this job. It was a wrecked scooter and one with a blown motor. I was making 2 into 1. This company was Adventure Scooter at the time. They rented scooters, but they also had a repair shop in the back. What John did for me was, he was a Harley guy, right? So he ordered me my parts through the catalogs. I got them at an extreme discount. And when they came in, I quit my job. I put my bike on the lift and I went to work on it. And I did a bunch of work to it. The lead mechanic, I forget his name. He had a real South Carolina accent. I remember that. But me and him became friends. And here he is helping me with my bike a little bit. While I was working on my bike, John wouldn't allow me to take a scooter off the island. See, we had a fleet of them. We could use them whenever we wanted. My bike hardly moved. I would grab a scooter and use it. And the lead mechanic here, he had keys to the place, and we could just use the scooters. They were easier to get around the island on. But he loaned me a motorcycle of his own to use because I was staying a couple of islands up, which is a whole nother story, in a camp I wasn't supposed to be at. So here we are, we would get scooters and go bombing around the town together. We did a lot of things together. We went out on the ATV, what do they call them, the wave runners, because he was the mechanic. We could do it for free. All these things happened. And so when I got my bike done, I took it down off the lift. John gave me my job back, and I went back to work working on the scooters. And for 2 months, I worked on the scooters. And when I left there, I had my bike fixed up and I had some money. I got there with nothing. There's more to this story, boys. So one of the guys, our salesman, Jeff, that was his name, Jeff, lived on a boat. And him and his buddy used to go sailing a lot. And here they are, they invited me to go. They're letting me steer the boat like I am somebody, right? Just riding along. Here we are coming back in. There's some of the guys, right, that worked there. And John. We're doing something to his bike, I guess. While in Daytona, at the rally, I met a girl who, one year, and she just walked up to me and she said, my best friend told me that during the rally, I have to find a guy with a motorcycle, get with him, take the week off from work, run around, and have fun. I'm looking at her, I says to her, you've come to the right place. I think I can help you. I ended up staying with Donna for quite a while, staying at her house after the show, probably a month or something, I forget. We went camping, we took trips on my bike, we did a lot of things together. Now all of a sudden we're going to jump over to Arizona. This is Prescott, Arizona. I was in town, and there was these people there, and this girl there asked me if I would give her a ride home. And when we got there, this cop pulls in and breathalyzes her right in front of me, right through the window, and then he splits. And when he leaves, I go, what the hell was that? She said, oh, I'm on house arrest. She's been a bad girl. She's only allowed to go to town to go shopping or for a couple of things, church or whatever, I don't know. But I said, too bad. I'm going to the hot springs tomorrow, and I was going to invite you to go with me out the other side of Cottonwood. She said, I want to go. I said, they're going to put you back in jail when you get back. She said, I don't care. I came pick her up, and we took off. And as I learned more about her, what I found out was she was just somebody who would do anything. And she'd had been with people that got her into things that were really illegal. And I began to wonder if it was even safe to be with this girl, right? Because they'd done some really whacked out shit that they'd actually gotten away with. But the last 21 miles going to this hot springs was dirt road, goes way out through this canyon. See that big canyon there? And a few miles out, I noticed there's no cars, there's nobody out there. And I stopped the bike and I got off. And I starts taking off my clothes. She said, what are you doing? I says, take your clothes off, Kat. She says, what? I said, take your fucking clothes off. So she did. We rode 19 miles of this road naked. I was in first gear the whole time, so it took a long time. It was really steep, rough road. The last part, I had to unload the bike just to get it down the hill. And that night, we slept next to the motorcycle. I was just on the ground, and when I woke up in the morning, she was gone. And I took a walk, and I found her, and she didn't know I was watching her. She was in this beautiful waterfall, and she was laughing and just playing. Sorry, you guys that have the blacked out screen, because you're going to miss this, but she was just playing like a little kid. And I just thought it was beautiful, this outlaw chick who had become like a little kid, you know. And eventually, because I went and got my camera and sat in the bushes, right? And eventually she caught me. You can see she caught me there. This is just a hot springs in Arizona. This is a hot springs in California. This is actually before I hit the road, when I just used to take some shorter trips. I was going out with Tina there. She's down on the right. You blacked out guys can't see that. This is a hot springs in Oregon. I'm going to call this girl Bobby, because I know she wouldn't want her face in here, because I know her. We went out for a long time, but she ended up moving up to Northern California, and I went up and was visiting and took her for a ride, and I shot these pictures of her in her backyard. They had a pond back there. Yeah. But I'd gone out with her back during my trailer. See, there's my trailer again. There she is. Sorry, blacked out guys. But there she is. Furnace Creek, 190 feet below sea level. That's Death Valley. That's Mexico. In Baja. Look at the size of that cactus, man. They got cactus like trees down there. This house is in Mulahay, and these gringos have their houses along this river that goes through there that makes it green for a short while in the desert, right? Because Baja's a desert boy. That's when I first started going down into Mexico. And from where I'm sitting, I'm looking into their living room. This is the kitchen in one of the houses. I became friends with these guys. I used to come over and drink coffee with them because I was staying in a campground right behind the house, which was $5 a day, I think. There's their living room. Sid, he's from Germany, man, and he got in trouble in that country, and he had to leave the country. He didn't have the paperwork to come to the U.S., so he went to Mexico, and he didn't have the paperwork there either, but especially back then, you could get away with it. He's still down there. He's older and relaxed now, but he belonged to an outlaw motorcycle club. Somehow got himself in trouble, and I would see him down there all the time. This is his bike here, and he said two things to me. He speaks 3 languages, German, English, and of course he speaks fluent Spanish. And he said he's married to a Mexican woman now, but I seen him a while back. He's still there. But he told me 2 things that stuck with me. He told me, he said, this is a great country in which to be an outlaw, because no matter what kind of trouble you find, you can always buy your way out. And the other thing he said was, you don't see that many American bikers down here. He says that is because their veins is full of buttermilk instead of piss and vinegar, as they should be. I met this girl, Mariella, in a gym, and she invited me to come visit. And she lived on the beach just south of town. This is her place on the sand. You can see it's outside. Her furniture is sitting on the sand. Next to the place, she had an RV, which is her bedroom, right? And she invited me to go out on her boat to go get scallops. And here she is just in the front of the boat. And she took me to this island. And she pulled it. She was a really tough, strong chick. She took me to this island and moored her boat. And that's the scallop tool I got in my hand. That's on the Sea of Conception. The Bay of Conception, they call it, yeah. And here we are just going down in the boat and messing around in the boat. And yeah, it's in her camper. This ship is one of the old ships. Things have changed in Mexico a lot since I started going down there. It used to be a lot rougher. It's come up a lot more modern. But this ship is an 18-hour ride. Went from La Paz over to Mazatlan. And of all the big ships I've been on, they always put the trucks and stuff down in the cargo hold. But this one had that elevator. And they were lifting trucks up to the top deck. They lifted my bike up to the top deck. I had access to it all night long. This thing was a freighter, never designed to carry people. And when it set out to sea, some of the guys tied hammocks underneath their trucks and slept in their hammocks. I climbed up on top of these trucks on the right that are flatbeds. I used to smoke a pipe back there, just tobacco, and I sat up there as we were steaming across the water. And I'll tell you something, man, I forget where I slept, but if you get on a big ship, especially this one's in, something close to a third world country, I guess at the time it really was more, and when you're sleeping on a ship, if you've ever slept on the deck, you can always feel the engines coming through the deck, a light vibration when you're out to sea. When you're steaming across some place like that on this big adventure, I'll tell you what, man, you don't need any Prozac, you're alive. just coming into Yucatan, which is at the very bottom of Mexico. First time I ever been down there. In the jungle at a gas station, I met this guy, this old American. I think he was 67. He was really old, man. And that bike was a European bike. Honda, I think it's Honda. But anyways, it's an adventure bike. And he imported it piece by piece because he had to take it apart to import it into the U.S. But he'd been all over the world. He told me he burned his last girlfriend out and she went back home. And he was hanging around Mexico and he was going to go into Texas to get with some other girl he knew, but he wasn't in any hurry to get there. And he told me all these, we talked for a while. He told me about all these adventures. And I asked him, I said, to an old adventurer like you, does it ever get old? Like when the extraordinary becomes the ordinary, what are you going to do for fun, right? He told me, hell no. He said, you just have to get bigger adventures. Yeah, it's just the jungle. Look at my little bike there next to that serious jungle. It's riding somewhere down there. So long ago, I don't remember. This is a town. A lot of these towns back then, they'd never seen a bike like mine. This girl was just walking her pig down the street. I have better pictures of it, but I put them in for a magazine story years ago, and I don't have them anymore. This is just a convenience store. At the time back then, things have come up more, but it was just a store on the side of the road. Look at the kid's toy. It's a dead Gila monster, right? Or not Gila, what do you call them? Iguanas. They got a lot of them down there. And it's like was it Huck Finn? Yeah, with the dead cat. I did this story already, so I'm not really going to get into it. But Eve here, this is in the city of Oaxaca in the mountains. There's reasons I was there. Well, I'm not going to tell long stories in this, but Eve and her husband had worked their lives away and they were going to travel when they got old. And right before it was time to travel, he up and died. And she was pissed off at him, pissed off probably till the day she died. And she took off without him. And she was heading for, where was it? I think Panama, in this van. But she had hang-ups with her money card or something. And she didn't care. She was hanging around. We became friends. We spent time together. I told the story of Martha in another story. So I'm not going to get into it now. But she just happens to be in this bunch of pictures I have here. Down on the beach, north of Puerto Vallarta, a good ways, there's a town called San Blas. And I stayed a night there once, and you know, they have dew and sand fleas. And there's, along the beach, there's a bunch of restaurants like this. And they might just have a Coleman stove and a cooler for to keep for a refrigerator. They're allowed to do these kind of things. It's actually a lot more freedom than the U.S. has, even back then. And one guy, he let me sleep inside of his restaurant, and in the morning, so I could be under his roof, pulled back a table or two, I put my tent up in there. And in the morning, I was over at Stoner Surf Camp, and I was just having some breakfast, and I actually bought a shower from them. They gave me a bucket of water, right? So it cost me almost nothing, and I got cleaned up in that. A little more of the area. There are a lot of surfers there. But while I'm eating, this girl comes walking in off the beach, and she's an American girl, and she starts talking to me, and she's going to, I'm going to Oaxaca at the time. I was going to Puerto Escondido, which is way down there along the coast, and she was going the same direction. And what she was doing was she was taking buses through Mexico and sleeping on the side of the road. She had very little money. And I told her, I said, you can come with me, Amy, because we're going the same way down along the coast. I said, if you want to buy half the gas. So she brought her stuff out, which wouldn't fit, threw half of it away, and I loaded up the bike for two, and we took off, right? And I don't know, 20 minutes, half an hour out of town, she tells me she's a lesbian. And I said to her, I said, why are you telling me this now, Amy? I don't think she'd ever been with a man. She said, well, I thought if I told you before, I might not be going with you. Am I still going with you? I said, well, of course you are. First off, she's a very interesting person. And second off, she speaks plain English. And it gets pretty lonely when you can't speak the language. So we rode down the coast, man. You can see it's still deserty. But as you get further down, it turns more jungly, right? And we slept on the side of the road. She was a total hippie type chick. At one point, she went swimming in a lake we were by. We actually stayed near one city, a bigger town, and she didn't like it. Tourist area. She had to sleep in my tent. She didn't fucking have one, and there's mosquitoes. She had a sleeping bag. That's all she had. And first night in there, she's all scooting up to the other end of the tent, and And I'm laughing. I had 2 rules at the time: be my friend or fuck me. Just don't play me in between. So in my mind, I just changed her to friend. So she figured that out before long. So she rode with me, very courageous. And when we got down to Acapulco, just south of Acapulco's too crowded, but right around the corner there's another area, and that's where the train station and the bus station was. And I let her off at the bus station, because she was going down to get to some nude beach she'd heard about, man. It was her reason for being there, and she was scared to death. I walked into the woods with her and helped her find a place to sleep, and because she had to be there early in the morning. I forget the details of it all. And I admired her courage, because courage is when you feel the fear and you do it anyway. And you know, I ran into her later up in New Hampshire. I was at the Laconia rally. She was in Connecticut, I think, and she had a car and a cell phone by then, and she was going to Canada to teach kids how to shit in the woods, she said. Something to do with camps. And I told her, I said, well, you can come over here and camp with me, because we'd become friends, right? We kept in touch a little bit, and she did. She brought her car. I said, Amy, you got your own tent? She said, why? I said, well, because you do have the body of a female, and I'm not gay. So she brought her own tent. She had one. She put it up next to mine, and we spent some time together. This is just, way back then things were different. I don't really see this anymore, but this was a Mexican laundromat. They would wash in the rivers. You can see the way they pull their cars in and wash them in there too. Oh, Hurricane Heather, that's back up to Prescott, Arizona. I just met her up there, and it was a fling thing with her. We were young, you know how it is. And she had a house. And I'll tell you something that happened. I was in the bedroom, I think, and I was reading a book or something. And the smell of skunk just came through and blew me right out the back door. See, the dogs were hassling some skunk on the porch, and the door was open. Now, when you go by a skunk that's been dead a while, it don't smell so bad. But boy, I found out what it's like when you're up close and personal. Hurricane Heather, that's what she went by. As you can see how long ago that is. That was my first Evo. Before that, I had a couple of cast iron Sportsters. That was my first Evo motor with a 5-speed. Softail was the one I began to travel on, what I started with. Tony girl, just outside of my trailer. Very old picture. The motor in Betsy had 210,000 miles on it, the original motor. And I got a deal on this one from a guy. It was a crate motor, brand new. And I got it for $1,000, plus I had to give him my old worn out motor. It was a friend of mine who bought and sold this kind of stuff. So it was a lot easier than rebuilding the old one. So there I got my new motor and my old one in the bike. There I got the old one pulled out. There's my new 2000 motor on the right, and my 1988 motor on the left. Got a new carburetor on it and everything. And while I had the bike apart, I did a bunch of other stuff to it. You know what I did with this bike? I put a new motor, new carburetor, if I can remember correctly. I put a new belt drive, all the parts, a new tire. Back then in the 90s, all the new riders were buying these bikes and swapping out the parts. Well, Harley wasn't a rich corporation back then, and they were making all their bikes out of the same parts. And we had swap meets because people used to work on their own stuff. Every third part I kicked in a swap meet fit my bike if I was walking through all the parts, right? And Tim, he used to have negotiable parts. He's dead now. Died of natural causes. And he had a tire I wanted. But it was on a wheel, my wheel, same one. And I said, Tim, I want that tire. He said, take it. He said, take the wheel. I said, I don't want the wheel, I want the tire. He said, well, take the wheel. I said, I don't want to pay for that wheel. He said, I asked you to pay for that wheel? He said, I'm not going to pull that tire off of there. Are you going to pull it off there? He said, take the wheel. It's the same as yours. It's got a lot less miles on it, new bearings, blah, blah, blah. So I put on a new tire and a belt drive. Well, a belt drive. I put on a new tire, a new wheel, and I forget some other shit too I put on it. The total cost, with a new carburetor, which was selling for like $350 at the time, the total cost for everything was $1,350 when I was done. That motor I left in there for 324 or 326,000 miles. the crank came out of true. It began to have problems, but boy, it went a long, long way without any trouble at all. Brand new motor. I'd never had one before. So when it finally gave me problems, a friend of mine had another one with low mileage on it for sale for $1,100. I just swapped them. See, they're easier than taking them apart and rebuilding them, a lot easier. And there the bike is going back together, as you can see it, right? And that concludes my little slideshow here. Now, I know a lot of old guys like to reminisce about the times of their youth, and I hope that's not too much what this seems like. What it is for me is back in the days when I was doing magazine stories, I was a young man, and I thought the stories were more interesting because I was just more full of piss and vinegar. Now, of course, I'm a lot mellower, and the stories reflect that. So, but what I'd really like to know is, did this video work for you guys with the pictures? These things are hard to make. Or would you rather just see the regular videos that I usually make? So you want more of these or not, really, is what I'm asking you guys. You can let me know in the comment section. Now, a lot of people know that big shit's going on in the world. I hear talk of it around me constantly. Some people are very afraid, and I don't blame them. But I'm going to tell you something interesting, okay, is that the guys that are doing this make up under 2% of the population. They're not doing anything. We're doing it all to ourselves. And I made a video showing how that works and how we're doing it. If we stopped supporting them, they would have gone out of business a long time ago, actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave you guys a link to that video, either at the end of this video or down in the Dropbox, or both. It's called Solutions, and I hope you go take a look at it. It goes over what each of us can do on an individual basis and how we're supporting these motherfuckers. They're standing on our backs. If we didn't do it for them, they could do nothing. Under 2% of the population. Anyway, so I'm going to leave you guys that video. I hope you go look at it. For a moment, I want to talk a little bit about the big thing that happened in Mexico recently, because, well, I'm right where it happened, and what I'm here to tell you is it was just another fucking false flag. Can you believe that? Designed to make everybody up there afraid of here, probably hurt business here, and convince everybody maybe how, you know, it's bad down here and we really need to invade this country like all the other ones we're invading. And but it wasn't. This particular one was not a real deal. And of course, we're going to be having the Gypsy Gene Cancer Run May 15th through the 17th. It's going to be in Columbia, Mississippi, which is southern Mississippi. I've talked about it plenty. As it gets closer, I'll talk about it more. I hope to see some of you guys there. For those of you who don't really know or haven't seen what happened with the whole Gypsy Gene thing, I made a series of videos about that, and the last one that I made was the most popular thing I ever made. If anything I ever did ever went completely viral, and of course it's a story I can't nor do I want to reproduce, but it was a phenomenal story, and that's what created this whole thing. And I will see about leaving you guys a link to the first one of those, or the last one, in the Dropbox, because that's what inspired the Gypsy Gene rally. Fantastic story, you guys. And so I'm going to leave you a flyer to the rally right here. I'll talk about it more later, I'm sure. And I'll see you all on the next video.